there's a lot to be said about Curtis Sliwa. At least Sliwa's like, this guy's New York.
Yeah, he's authentic.
He's
I mean, he's a horse's ass,
Yeah,
but he's authentic.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
And welcome to another edition of the Politics Unplugged podcast. Today, I'm going to go deep on the elections from coast to coast and get a read on what they actually mean with DJ Quinlan, the Democratic strategist here in Arizona. Thank you for joining us here, DJ.
Happy to be here, Dennis.
All right, man. Let's start with the big, broad 100,000-foot question. What was your takeaway from Tuesday night? The general consensus is it was a big night for Democrats. I mean, the results are, Democrats won in areas that Democrats normally win. So some people are trying to argue, like, well, it's not that big of a deal. Like when a Democrat wins in New York, well, that's a very blue city. What's the big deal? And you can extrapolate from that and talk about the governor's races in Virginia, New Jersey, and whatnot. So what's your takeaway?
Well, I mean, the fact is we had elections actually across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing we saw, kind of regardless of where those elections were held, a massive Democratic overperformance. So I actually think it is a very big deal. And, you know, we have this long history of looking at special elections, looking at the off-year election, how they correlate to how the midterms perform.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a really strong track record of seeing the party that's out of power do well in these special elections, do well in these off-year elections, and that translating quite well into how the 2026 elections go. So,
yeah, I mean, one of the bellwether states has always been Virginia, and Virginia really dominated. Dominated with the Democrats there, with expanding their majority in the legislature. Cruised to a victory in the governor's race there. So for you, then you think it portends to a good 2026 for Democrats?
I do, and I don't just base that off of Democrats actually winning in Virginia and actually winning in New Jersey, because as you mentioned, like we had the advantage in both those states, though Virginia is a quintessential swing state.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally, what we saw is those margins were quite massive, and actually, when you go down the ballot from the two governor's races, which Trump or Democrats won both of those states by about 5 to 6 points in the 2024 elections, won by double digits in both cases in the governor's races. But if you go down the ballot to the House of Delegates in Virginia, where there was a very narrow Democratic majority, 51-49, Democrats picked up 13 seats.
Yep.
Are actually now like approaching a supermajority, which is just rather like crazy.
Well, and the thing about Virginia is, a lot of people who work in Washington who may have been, affected by Doge or know people affected by Doge, they live in Virginia. And that's, maybe that's part of some of the anger coming out in that state, right?
Well, right. And, I would say, there's 380,000 governmental positions at all levels that have been lost during the Trump administration. These first 10 months of the Trump administration, they live across the country. They have family members.
Mm-hmm.
They have brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, cousins. Their families have been greatly affected, and they're just among the millions of people who've been negatively affected by the economy and the decisions of the Trump administration.
Yeah, and you start talking about getting down ballot. I mean, I know Colin and I were discussing this on Wednesday after the election. I mean, you look in like a state like Georgia, right? Pretty good, solid Republican state, but you look at there was a utility board election.
Yeah.
And they hadn't had a Democrat on that board since, was it 2003 or 2006? I can't remember. It was one of the two. They picked up 2 seats on that board.
Right. Yeah. Statewide seats by huge margins. Yeah. And, basically equivalent to our corporation commission.
Yeah.
These are the consummate, like, down ballot races that voters sometimes skip over. But, and they generally, political professionals, we use those sort of elections to look at generic Democratic or Republican performance.
Mm-hmm.
They're a measure of how people are feeling especially respective to the two parties.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about I mean, just the most fascinating local race I've watched in a long time, maybe ever. The New York City Mayor's race. You have a Democratic Socialist, an unapologetic Democratic Socialist, Zohran Mondani. Heading into the election, nobody was talking about him. Ends up walking away. What happened there?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things you can learn from looking at that race.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of them is about authenticity. I think one of the reasons Mondani did really well in the race is he had a very clear message that was believable, that voters believed him on, and he was just consistent from the beginning. They didn't sense he was acting like a typical politician.
Yep.
And I think it was reflective of the fact that, people in New York City, just like people across the country, are feeling very pinched by the economy right now. They're very worried about affordability. They're very worried about paying their rent. They're very worried about the cost of groceries. I think Mondani tapped into that very well. And of course, it was a Democrat on Democrat race.
Sure.
But, in a lot of ways, Cuomo kind of represents a lot of what's wrong with politics in America right now. He was seen as the establishment. He's seen as a little corrupt. He's seen as a guy who has all these scandals and, basically just gaslighting people to just ignore what's right in front of their face.
Didn't he kind of get the Trump endorsement at the end too?
He did, yeah.
I mean,
it's certainly didn't help, I think, anybody in the 25 elections.
Well, I thought that too, and I've been talking about this to a lot of people. I really thought one of the more interesting moments in that race, and really a defining moment if you're looking at the difference between your grandpa's politics and today's politics, was on the debate stage. It was kind of a fun question was asked of the candidates if the Knicks and the Mets were playing a championship game on the same night, which would never happen. But if that happened, which game would you go to? And old school, old man Cuomo is like, well, I'd find a way to go to both. And then Mondani responds, it's like, man, this is why people don't like you. Just pick a team, man.
Right.
Because that goes to your authenticity question.
Yeah.
It's like people see that. People aren't dumb. Voters aren't stupid like that. They know that you're being a politician when you say, I'm going to go to both of them. And I think it's refreshing to hear a candidate just say, no, man, you got to make some choices. Just pick a team, dude.
Yeah, there was a great moment. Mondani was asked about that later on. I can't remember which interview it was. And he basically said that as he was hearing that question, he said, oh, there's no wrong answer to this question. And he said, oh, and then Cuomo gave the wrong answer.
He came up with the wrong answer. On the fly, which is a talent, I suppose.
I think it's fundamentally right. I think there's a high premium on authenticity in politics these days.
I also asked about this on the show. I'm just kind of curious your take on the tenor, just how Mondani comported himself. You saw a real contrast from last year's presidential election for what you're seeing coming out of the White House. A lot of anger, a lot of lock them up kind of ethos and this idea of that. Mondani's always smiling. Mm-hmm. No matter whether he's getting attacked, the hardest question he gets, he's still being he sounded positive and upbeat and uplifting. Is that do you see it the same way? And if you did, was that a kind of part of the mix for Mondani's success?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, politics are so cynical these days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, having somebody smile, having somebody not just lock in and, basically he admits some of the things he said in the past, maybe he is moving on from a little bit, or maybe taking a slightly different view or willing to reevaluate. It's just something you don't see coming out of the Trump style politics these days. And I think it is refreshing to voters. And actually, in a way, it's a little bit of harkening back to the politics of the past, which is optimism, integrity, truth, just being an authentic person who cares about people. And I think that is why he was rewarded, with victory.
And I'm asking about this, and people, if they're listening to this, you're from New York, you're an expert, you followed the daily TikTok of the campaign and all that. I don't care to get into the specifics of the campaign. We're talking about this because I would like to know if there's something that can be gleaned from way Mondani ran that race, could be gleaned here in Arizona from Democrats.
I think so. I think the big lesson is authenticity, like we talked about, but I also think it's action. I think he's very clear. He had a lot of messages when he said, look, the things I want to focus on are affordability. Well, all of the parts of his platform are related to affordability. And he said, you can measure me on them. This is what I want to do. And certainly, I think there is sometimes a fear of being specific in politics or, signaling action because then you get into office and you actually have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's actually a high premium, and that voters are just very frustrated that they want to see politicians doing things that help them in their
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day lives.
And I think one of the problems, sorry, that you Democrats have over and over is you get hung up on the details of things. It's like, oh well, this is like, housing is one of the ones I hear all the time. People have been really particularly upset in Arizona when they've seen the cost of housing skyrocket.
Right.
Yet you don't hear anybody really trying to address the root cause here, which is how do you stop hedge funds in these massive corporations from coming in buying up large swaths of housing? Because there's an argument of fairness if there's a massive multi-billion-dollar hedge fund competing against a family of four for a house. The hedge fund's going to win every single time. And I talk to Democrats about how come you guys don't do something to stop that? It's like, oh, it's hard.
Right.
I'm like, I get it, but how come you're not talking about it?
Well, and it requires taking on some very powerful interests.
Yeah.
And I think that is what's challenging. And I actually think the frustration that has built up in the electorate over the lack of inaction, specifically to housing, is partly responsible for Trump's success.
Yeah.
Trump gives the rhetoric to it.
Mm-hmm.
His policies don't follow through and don't deliver, which is going to be the problem the Republicans have in 2026. But for Democrats, I think it's really important that we actually start to take action, which fundamentally is going to mean taking on some very, very powerful interests. And it's a calculation politically that people are going to have to make as to whether the cost of taking on these interests is higher than the payoff of actually doing the things that voters want to see.
Yeah, and I bring that up because how come you don't see you don't see Arizona the governor? How come you don't see that message come out of the governor? Look, we're gonna stop these hedge funds from buying up this property. I mean, because you saw in Mondani's race, he's like, look, we're gonna do government run grocery stores, freeze rent, and all this other stuff, and everybody else is talking about how hard it is.
Yeah.
But I think for him, he's talking to voters on their level, and voters internalize that as he gets me.
Yeah. So I think there's kind of a difference in rhetoric and there's a difference in policy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes what we see is, as you mentioned, sometimes some Democrats are hesitant to engage in the rhetoric, knowing that the policy follow through is something that is kind of a decades-long problem.
Yep.
And I agree fundamentally that I think Democrats should take a more aggressive approach.
Because they got to win. You got to start winning if you're a Democrat, right?
Right. And I think, like I said, sometimes that means taking on some of these powers. I think it's hard to zero in on any particular because I think it's a party-wide problem that we have. But I do think fundamentally as a party, we need to start, regardless of, whatever our ability is to affect the outcome in the, let's say the next 6 months, the next year. Look, we're out of power in the Congress. The Republicans control the House, the Senate, the presidency. We are not passing a housing reform bill in Congress this year.
No.
Sorry to say. Yeah. However, I do think that doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about it, because I think the absence of talking about it means that voters are going to be very susceptible to hearing promises from Trump that fundamentally they're not delivering on, but at least they're talking about them. And I think that is, one of the lessons learned from, the 2025 elections. I would even say, and, look, Mondani, Republicans are going to jump over themselves saying he's a communist, he's a socialist. I think, look, it's a big tent party. We're not saying the guy who's running for mayor of New York City is the guy or the woman who should have run for governor of Virginia. They're very different. I mean, I think the governor of Virginia, the incoming governor, kind of ran as a very moderate candidate. Certainly she was, in Congress. However, she did take a very aggressive approach, especially as it related to the Trump administration. And I think it was refreshing for a lot of Democrats to see, somebody standing up and fighting in this moment where there's a tremendous amount of federal overreach.
Yeah, let's go to the other side of the country and talk a little bit about Proposition 50, which basically allows the Democrat-dominated legislature in California to redraw the maps in favor, gerrymander the maps in favor of Democrats. Now, this was all done in response to what was going on in Texas, because they're in the middle of redrawing their maps to give Republicans, as an estimated 5 more seats over there. Your take on this and what the ramifications are, and whether or not this kind of solidifies Gavin Newsom as the leader of the resistance to Trump at this point.
I think, to start with, with Proposition 50 in California, you got to back up to, Donald Trump picking up the phone and, calling his good friend Greg Abbott and saying, hey, I need 5 more seats in Congress.
Yeah.
Why does he say that? Well, he knows the economy's not going so well. He knows the 2026 midterms are not looking great for Republicans. The way they want to hold on to the House is literally by gerrymandering Republican seats. I think Democrats of the past would have said, well, hey, we're not going to violate our values. We believe in fair redistricting. We're against gerrymandering. We're just going to speak out against the gerrymandering in Texas. Well, I think one of the lessons we have learned during the Trump era is that we cannot unilaterally disarm against the Republicans. And I think that is the lesson Gavin Newsom applied. I think he did it the right way. He went back to the voters. He said, hey, he laid out the case. Let them decide.
I think they had to go back to the voters, too, because like
They did.
Arizona.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they passed the constitutional amendment that created much like Arizona, they did it just after us. They created their independent commission after Arizona did in 2000. California passed in 2001. It was a constitutional amendment. The voters passed it. They had to go back. But, I think that was the right process. Look, I don't think anybody should be in favor of gerrymandering. I think 2025 is the case study for why we need independent commissions or nonpartisan, neutral criteria redistricting across the whole country. But the problem is, we live in a federalist society that has state-by-state redistricting. And certainly I think there's probably a role for the federal government to pass kind of some set criteria. But that's going to be a 2026, 2027 argument. In this short term, the question is, are you going to let Republicans in Texas cheat, rig the map, and not respond? And I think California said no. I think the really interesting thing is, given the results on Tuesday, whether this redistricting in Texas is actually going to help or hurt the Republicans, because it's all based on the 2024 performance that Trump had with Latino voters, who Latino voters completely turned on Trump on Tuesday.
I think there were some swings in certain districts of like upwards of 80% with Hispanic voters in certain areas of the country, correct?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty much a return to the pre-2024 numbers with Latino voters in New Jersey and Virginia specifically, where we had exit polls.
Well, there's also been some concern, too, and I've read that there could be a backlash to redistricting, like that. But some voters they don't like it. They're like, stop using us as your political pawns, and it may not work the way some people think it or want it to.
Yeah. I mean, look, Arizona's not the perfect case study, but I think we were an early tester of an independent redistricting commission that has so far worked out relatively well in this state. One of the lessons we learned is, our commission has 5 people that make the decisions, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and an independent. Puts a lot of pressure on the independent chairperson. California learned a lesson. They made their commission quite a bit larger so that there's not so much political pressure on just kind of one individual. But you got to say, I mean, our results have been fundamentally better. We have led the country in terms of like percentage of competitive districts at the legislative and congressional level continually over the 2 decades that it's been in place. And I think, if we had a nationwide system that was like that, even if it was state by state, we'd be in a lot better situation because voters would get to choose their elected officials, not the other way around.
All right, let's wrap on this. We saw the president post on Truth Social, whatnot. He said that, the reasons Democrats or Republicans didn't do well on election night, it was that Trump wasn't on the ballot, which is true. I mean, when he's on the ballot, it's just different. And the government shut down. Is the president onto something there? Because I could see a case that's accurate, actually.
Well, I think, I definitely think there's a little bit of truth to that. I mean, Republicans have actually done well in getting out kind of their own version of like lower turnout voters, which had historically always been viewed as, the domain of Democrats. So in presidential years, they have been performing better, ironically, and Democrats have been performing better in midterms. Should be one of the scary things for Republicans to deal with in 2026. And I will say the government shutdown certainly is hurting Republicans. I mean, the big missing thing there is, we just got the news today, consumer confidence has dropped below 2008. Whoa. It's the second lowest it's ever been.
And we saw a really terrible jobs report, like from, I forget the name of the group, but it's, I believe Christmas is the name of the group.
Yeah.
Basically, worst October for jobs since 2003.
2003, that's right. And, you know, I think a couple days ago, we got the news that so far in the administration, they've lost 1 million kind of corporate jobs. Like some of the better jobs, actually, that, you know, prop up our economy. We've lost 1 million of them in 10 months.
Well, and I believe the job loss, the percentage increase month over month was from September to October, according to this group, because we're not getting any labor statistics from the government right now. But according to this group, was from September to October was 183% increase, and then year over year from October to October was 175% increase in job loss.
Yeah, I mean, it's rather remarkable, especially when you consider the economy lags behind policy. It takes a while when you make a policy change economically for the pain actually to be felt. The one thing Trump has actually really been an innovator on is making economic pain get felt in a very short amount of time. And I think, you know, I hope that this is not true for the sake of our country, but I really feel like in the next 12 months, the amount of pain that people are feeling, especially if we don't do things about like healthcare costs and grocery price costs and these tariffs that are just killing our economy, you know, we could be sitting here a year from now kind of wishing we were back at this point, you know, where we are currently today. And I think people feel that. People do, you know, look at the economic pain they're feeling, and they don't really care what the number is on the stock market. They know what their household situation is and how it's changed from a year ago.
All right, we'll end there with that. But I do want to ask you one question before you leave. You told me you watch a lot of college football. I'm going to put you on record. Who wins the big game of the week between Iowa and the University of Oregon, the Ducks?
Well, I've heard Oregon just is not good at playing in cold weather.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I think. I don't think they do well in the wet or the cold.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting game. I will stick with Oregon, just in reverence to the old Pac-12. May they rest in peace. But yeah, I think Oregon's going to win.
Yeah, because Colin and I will definitely be talking about that. Him, went to Oregon, and I grew up loving my Iowa Hawkeyes. Yeah. It'd be a big game in my world.
Yeah, you guys may not be talking next week. I don't know. We'll see.
No, we'll be talking. I mean, the joke has been, you know, like I told him, I was like all week long. It's like my head tells me like Iowa's going to lose this game, but I just know by Saturday morning I'll be pretty convinced that Iowa can win.
Well, yeah. I mean, it'll be a big win if they do. A big win.
Be great. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by here, man. And welcome back to the second half of the Politics Unplugged podcast. As always, joined by producer extraordinaire and Oregon Duck fan.
Yes. Oregon Duck grad. I'm an alum.
You're an alum. Colin, how are you, man?
I'm good.
So, could you show the shirt there to?
My Oregon shirt.
Yeah.
Just wearing my Sabrina, Oregon shoes. Thought about a cap. Felt like overkill.
Those shoes are pretty dope, though.
They're pretty
great.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the election. What we saw Tuesday. A little bit more, and get your thoughts on the Mondani race, the New York mayor, which basically was the New York City mayor's race was the Mondani race. Race. He ended up defining that race.
Yes.
Just an amazing thing to watch as somebody who wasn't a thought going into the election cycle and ends up just walking away with a very easy victory.
Yeah.
Exciting young voters, voters of all ages, of all types. He doubled the turnout. I believe the normal turnout for a New York City mayoral race is about 1.1 million.
Yeah,
2 million people cast ballots. The other in that election. Why are we talking about it so much here in Arizona? Because the focus, I've always really wanted to focus on Arizona politics, but I think there are lessons to be learned for politicians here in Arizona.
There are, and we got on this early.
Yeah.
He, a few weeks before the primary, he was down 14, I think, to Cuomo.
Yeah.
But gaining rapidly and ended up winning that primary by a landslide and won this one by a landslide. And I think there are a lot of really valuable lessons here that I think a lot of consultants and people in the Democratic leadership are going to really work very, very hard to ignore. But they're there. He was young and engaged and had ideas that he can follow through on. And they can keep saying...
And they might succeed.
They
might
fail.
Succeed.
They may not.
Yeah.
But he has ideas. The city needs greater you need to be able to afford a place to live. He wants to put in rent control.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a great idea. Maybe it's not. The best that Arizona Democrats have given us is maybe you can live in someone's guest house. And, well, we've created a fund.
I know.
I mean, no one gives a shit.
Nobody gives a shit.
Living in someone's guest house is not...
No.
It's not an answer.
No.
Rent control might be. Maybe it's not. But they seem to think it is.
Yeah.
And he's going to do what he can to make it work.
You've seen it in New York for a long time, and you're starting to see it here in Phoenix. When you start talking about affordability and housing, that the people, the much vaunted first responders, the police and fire out there, can't afford to live in the cities that they're sworn that they protect.
Right. And when they claim that you can't do some of the things he wants to do, like he wants to have free buses. And people are screaming that that's socialism and you can't do that. And how can you have free buses when we can't afford that? And I mean, if you want the money, you could stop giving literally billions of dollars in subsidies to Elon Musk, because New York has done that. So, I mean, that would have paid for the free buses. And also, the one like really white Republican part of New York City is Staten Island. The Staten Island ferry's free. So it's not really a we can't have free public transit. It's a we can't have black people have free transit. The free transit should only be for the white people. That's essentially what that boils down to. Either start charging for the Staten Island ferry or shut up.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like, right before we started recording, we were talking about one of the key moments in that race where Cuomo is lecturing Mamdani about what he can't do about rent control and stuff like that. And Mamdani's like, look, if you want somebody's going to tell you what they can't do, vote for this guy. And I would argue, to a certain extent, you hear that a lot from Democrats, particularly in Arizona. You do. It's like, oh, well, we can't do that.
That would be hard.
That would be hard. Or they'll give you, and I'm not saying that the reasons it would be hard to do or impossible. Or not, maybe there are legitimate reasons to believe that. But I think a lot of voters want them to try.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes
there to do the easy stuff. Yeah. Anyone can do the easy stuff.
Yes, particularly when it comes to the things that matter, housing, education, that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that has gotten so goddamn expensive.
Yes.
That people are angry about.
And the number one thing we get that response on is quit allowing hedge funds to buy up all the housing.
Yes.
Because that's what's driving the housing issue is hedge funds. You can't outbid a hedge fund. A hedge fund's going to win. Hedge funds buy up all the housing. There are all kinds of houses sitting around largely vacant in Phoenix because they're owned by hedge funds as investments. And when you bring that up to a Democrat running for office, they say, well,
so hard.
It's hard. I mean, are you going to tell people they can't buy a house? And like we're telling the people they can't buy a house now. I want to tell a corporation or a hedge fund or, I want to tell them they can't buy the house.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that hard. And of course, most of the politicians are getting their money from those hedge fund types and not from the people.
Well,
but find a way. Yeah. Find a way to say no to them. And I brought it up before, but I grew up in North Orange County in California, which has a long, not terribly proud history of really looking pretty hard at who's allowed to buy housing and who's not.
There's a lot of redlining or...
Yes. Yeah. You can redline out, anyone who's not white, but you can't redline out a goddamn hedge fund?
Yeah.
How is that possible?
How was that Yes. Or Democrats have another option. Like, just be fucking honest about it. Just start running like, hey, elect me. I'll do the easy stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I will follow the polls, and my consultant will look at the spot in the poll where we think I can be as conservative as possible, but still maybe drain a few Republican votes over, and they'll think that's it. And, the ultimate thing with Mondani proves that you don't have to go by the polls, and you don't have to run as a Democrat as a non-MAGA Republican, which I think is how most of them are choosing to run now.
Yeah.
He says he's a socialist, and when they go for the usual attacks, and for one thing, socialist, you bring that up, with an 80-year-old and they go, oh my God, I can't vote for that. You bring that up with a 20 or 30-year-old, they're like, about time. Cool, I'm down with that.
Yeah, and when that happens, there's been a lot of consternation with that. I've heard with middle-aged folks. They'll be like, "Oh my God!" Like, well, got to ask yourself why someone believes that. And the answers, I think come down to stuff what we're talking about. Like, you have a kid who's just getting into college, I believe.
Yeah.
You have two sons of college
Yes.
age. I don't know what their prospects are of being able to own a home in the future.
Oh, yeah, I think they probably kind of assume that's not likely.
Yeah, and that's a real bummer.
Yeah,
that's
it
a
is.
real
It
bummer.
shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, and that was never the case in this country until now.
No.
I mean, our age, it was a little bit. I mean, it was a lot more. It was a lot harder for us to buy than our parents.
Yeah.
I mean, you care divulging how much your parents paid for their home in Orange County?
It was, yeah, it was in the ballpark of $27,000 in the 70s. And it's a small house. It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath that at some point they'll sell for probably over $1 million.
Yeah.
They're in the right place.
Yeah.
Their timing was impeccable.
And I think, I would assume too, adjusted for inflation, $27,000 would not be adjusted upwards to $1 million.
It would not. I mean, there was just a study I saw that looked at housing prices or looked at general prices in '73 compared to now, and it found that in general we have a little more buying power, except for the really important stuff.
It is that's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, if housing followed the general cost of living for everything else, the general inflation and all that, the average house in 2025 would be $37,000.
Yeah, because again, just to remind you, you do a lot of consumer reporting during the week as well.
Yeah.
You brought that up in the morning meeting, and like people's jaws dropped.
Yeah.
They're like, "What?" And
Yeah.
like you like they looked at you like you were mistaken. And it was like, "No,
It's
$37,000."
That, that's housing's gone insane, and college education has also gone up 177% since 1973.
In Arizona, as we know from when Brnovich did that study, the 3 major universities here, Northern Arizona, ASU, and U of A, over 300% in the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stuff that matters.
In a state where it's constitutionally mandated to be as close to free as possible.
Yes.
And, our legislature, who will swear up and down that they'll do anything to worship the Constitution, that part doesn't seem all that important to them. One other thing I dug about Mondani is when the really hardcore anti-Muslim stuff started hitting them in the last few weeks, because there was when people realized that this was working and they needed to do something, then they started pulling out the 9/11 videos and all that. And his response was to record a video where he's going into a bodega and talking to people and petting a cat, and it's all in Arabic and subtitled, which was just the greatest kiss my ass response to it. And, the terrifying Muslim is there in a bodega patting the cat and saying, "How's it going, Chief?" Which is, subtitled.
I tell you what I found really interesting too is I think he also showed that you don't have to be angry to run a successful campaign. You can be uplifting.
Yeah.
You can be nice. You can have fun with yourself. I mean, he's self-deprecating.
Yeah.
And he smiled a lot. And he laughed a lot. A very big contrast from what we see on national politics right now, where everybody's got to go to jail.
Yeah.
Or we've got to get rid of these these groups of people or whatnot. Really dark stuff. This was a lot more uplifting, a lot more positive, and I think moving forward, I would love to see more candidates run their campaigns that way than the way we've been seeing predominantly the past 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, his campaign strategy was do a ton of videos where he's just out on the street walking around in New York talking to people in New York, and they did a masterful job of making it all look very genuine, and people clearly loved the guy, and you saw he clearly loved the city.
Yeah.
And Andrew Cuomo clearly hates the city. He's not lived in it. It hasn't been his home.
Well,
And
there
he
are
doesn't
rats
like
there,
it.
Colin. Well, there are rats there.
And when they needed him to be out among the working people, they used AI
Well,
in
he
the ads.
He can't brush up with the unwashed masses.
Yeah.
The great unwashed.
And there was Curtis Sliwa, who I think loves the city, but it's a different thing. Like it's
Well, we were saying
he
earlier-
loves the city like I had a movie poster for Taxi Driver on my
like we were joking before. Like, I mean, say what you want about him. He's a creature of New York,
Oh
man.
yeah, I love this place. I got stabbed here.
I know.
That's
I feel
Slee
like-
was clinging to the 1980s Times Square image
Yeah.
as much as he can, and I don't think people necessarily bought it this time.
Yeah, I'd hate to drive around New York with him. It'd just be like going down memory row. It's like, I got stabbed there.
Yeah,
Somebody threw a grenade in my car there.
remember that time we got to rouse some Puerto Ricans down in that alley?
Yeah. Oh God.
Yeah, I'm not sure the whole Guardian Angels thing plays as well now as it did back then.
But they had a movie about that when I was a kid, like an
sure they
an
did.
ABC movie of the week kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
Which
they were sort of heralded as the slightly less psychotic Travis Bickle. that-
Well, it's like
New York needs.
to this day, my mom still pictures her mental image of New York, where she's never been, is still like Taxi Driver, Death Wish, Times
Yeah.
Square,
Yeah,
which
it's downtown Disney. now.
It totally is Disney. It's
Yeah.
Disney's food court.
Yeah.
With a bunch of weird people, like interesting, strange people yelling about various things.
Dressed up as some sort of character, so you'll pay them to take a picture with them.
Yeah.
It's like being outside Grauman's Chinese on Hollywood Boulevard
Just-
or on the Strip in Vegas.
Oh man. Anything else stand out for you this week with the elections?
No, it was really interesting to see just how big a landslide it was. I mean, we get down to like the Georgian Utility Commission,
Mhm.
which has been 5-0 Republicans since 2006. And there were 2 seats open. They both went to Democrats by 10 points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, when you see that, and honestly, no one knows who these people are.
No.
When you're running for utility commission,
It should
people
be-
are voting on the letter after your
Yeah.
name exclusively. And that was a landslide for Democrats. So pretty much across the board, huge night for Democrats.
Yeah, no, I think Gavin Newsom kind of solidified himself as the leader of the resistance, the Trump resistance.
Yeah.
Because he can go and say like, I got something done.
Yeah. He's certainly up there. I'm not sure who's going to emerge as a front
No,
runner
I don't-
next time,
no, it's
but
3 years.
he's established himself pretty hard. Yeah, and there are things about him that are problematic for certain groups, but ultimately it may not even matter that much.
Who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows? I mean, I think Prickster in 3 years will be in the mix.
Yeah.
The governor, Andy Beshear, governor of
Kentucky,
he'll be in the mix. Shapiro probably is in the mix.
maybe, yeah.
I wonder if Kamala will be back.
I mean, she can run. She'll get her ass kicked if she does.
Yeah.
I would think someone will come to their senses and go, no one.
But
No
it was a
one
good,
wants this.
it was a good night, and I do think there is something to Trump analyzing the election, saying, "Well, it's because I wasn't on the ballot." Like that's true. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an off-year election. When Trump is on the ballot, it's different. I do get that, but still, this is not a positive sign for Trump and his policies, his domestic policies in this first 10, 11 months in office. And-
Sorry.
Oh no, yeah, and it's not a good sign. And in fact, if you're looking at that, I think you're going to see a reaction from the Trump administration on this and how they move forward. I don't know what that's going to be.
And I'm curious if you will, because the other thing he credited it to was the shutdown. And they've doubled down on everything there. They say people are angry about the shutdown. Clearly, that anger was focused on the Republicans based on the results.
By your own logic.
Yeah. So we're going to try and end the shutdown? No.
Yeah.
No, we're going to go to court to fight to keep people from
Yeah,
poor
yeah,
people from
yeah.
having food.
And on the show, I was just like, the TV show is asking us, like, so by the time this show drops on Sunday, we're going to see the end of the shutdown, or we're going to be talking about this again next week? And it's like, oh, no, we'll be talking about this.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest chance to get it changed is simply that if you have like CEOs taking business trips and have to deal with the airport for 2 or 3 hours, that might affect something.
It might.
Because I don't think they will change because normal people are being affected. But you get enough millionaires affected,
Yeah, something.
and something might move.
Yeah. And I they're so dug in at this point. Trump wants his win, and he wants to win the way he wants to win.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to compromise. You might see, well, I shouldn't say you might. I wonder if Republican leadership in the Senate will blow up the filibuster, because that's what Trump wants.
Yeah.
He's been talking about this now, and we'll see.
Yeah.
And then the last of Kyrsten Sinema's legacy will then go bye-bye.
What? Yeah.
I'm sure regular listeners of the podcast don't need an explanation on why that joke is funny or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kyrsten Sinema, who's currently lobbying cities, telling them, well, if they don't roll over for the data centers, then Trump will come in and smash them. Thanks, Kyrsten.
Wow. All right.
I hope this is what she dreamed of growing up in the abandoned gas station.
Jesus Christ.
That someday she can go to the cities she used to represent and tell them, look, just roll over, or otherwise I'm going to have Trump kick your ass.
How do you live in an abandoned gas station for many years?
That's a great question.
I've been asking that for a long time. It's more of a rhetorical question.
Yes, because it doesn't actually seem to have an answer.
No, except
it's almost like you can't.
Yeah, and there are maybe there were some family members who went on record with the Washington Post and the New York Times that said it wasn't an abandoned gas station.
Yeah. It's weird. It's almost as if the whole backstory was bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, her family had problems growing up. I don't think that's in dispute. But were they living in an abandoned gas station? Has the story been, is it akin to the story of walking to school uphill both ways when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think
maybe.
So. Yeah. This is a pretty steep hill.
All right, let's time to talk about some real serious shit here.
Okay,
We got to talk football.
Yeah. We've been waiting for this one. Didn't happen last year in the first year of of Oregon's entrance into the Big Ten. Oregon, Iowa, Kinnick Stadium.
Yep, Saturday in the cold, wet weather,
Yes.
which apparently is Oregon's kryptonite.
Yeah, for people who've missed it, we keep hearing from analysts and experts telling us that Iowa could have a big advantage because it's going to be cold and wet.
Yep.
And as someone who spent many years living in the Northwest and 10 years living in Eugene, Oregon, the home of the Ducks, I can tell you that they're accustomed to cold and wet.
I've been up there a lot in my life, and several times I've been cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cold and it's wet.
Yeah.
It rains a lot. There's a reason. I mean, they make an announcement at the start of every home game at Oregon, reminding people that it never rains in Autzen Stadium. And they did that at the last game in like a typhoon. It was pouring rain. Yeah, they announced it never rains, and everyone cheers as they sit there soaked in their Gore-Tex outfits.
Gore-Tex. Every time Gore-Tex pops up, I just think of George Costanza. It's Gore-Tex.
That's one thing, man. You live in Eugene. You've got quality waterproof gear.
Yeah.
Because you're wearing it 80% of the time.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've also been paying attention, but Iowa has become a little bit of a popular upset pick.
Yeah.
People love jumping on, on the upset there. Iowa teams, my beloved Iowa Hawkeyes, play well in November.
Yeah.
They do.
And they're having a good season.
Yeah.
Slow
start.
You look at the record, you look at the teams they played and their record and compare it to Oregon, and it's not wildly different.
Yeah.
I think Iowa lost to Penn State by 1.
Iowa beat Penn State.
Iowa beat Penn State. Okay.
And then they lost to Indiana.
Okay.
By I think it might have been a walk-off field goal.
Okay. Yeah. Oregon's 1 losses to Indiana.
Yeah.
We beat Penn State, which set the dominoes going for Penn State.
You destroyed. You killed Penn State's season. It's like after that, have they won since?
I don't know that they have. After that, they lost to UCLA, and then lost to Northwestern, and then James Franklin got the heave-ho with his $50 million buyout.
And then Iowa beat him with the
with the interim
guy.
Yeah. Penn State looked really good up until they lost that game to Oregon, and it was a good. It went overtime and lost.
And I was telling you, and I stand by this. Everything tells me Oregon will beat Iowa. There's just too much talent on the team, but I will have myself convinced by Saturday morning that Iowa will beat Oregon, and if they lose, I will be upset, and I'll give you my case why Iowa wins. I think they play better football in November historically under Kurt Ferentz in the 20 some odd years he's been there. Every November they get better. If they can run the ball against Oregon, and Oregon has shown a little bit of a vulnerability there, I think.
Yeah.
And keep your offense off the field, I think they could win in a lower scoring game.
I think the only way Iowa wins is in a pretty low scoring game.
Yeah. If you guys get out to a fast start, Oregon could win this in the first quarter.
Yes. Another thing you can put in Iowa's favor is the Ducks don't always look great coming off a bye, and they're coming off a bye.
Okay.
Their last game was against Wisconsin, and they were not horrendously impressive. I think the point spread going in was 34.
Mm-hmm.
It was, Vegas was expecting a blowout. It was not at all a blowout, but it was also a game where the quarterback got hurt early when it was 7-0, and they put in the backup, and the announcers were saying, I think Dante Moore, the starter, probably could come back in, but they feel like this game's easily in hand, and they just don't need to, so they'll let the walk-on backup finish it out. And the game was 7-0.
Oh, wow.
And that happened. And it was true. The Oregon was sort of sputtering on offense, but there was at no moment did I think Wisconsin was a threat.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't score at all until very late. So it's an Oregon team with a very stout defense and can be a very explosive offense. They were putting up huge numbers against Oklahoma State, Oregon State. Not great teams by any means, but if you're dropping 60 on Oklahoma State, that's you've got some offensive talent there. They've got explosive players, but they haven't looked great on offense their last couple games.
Well, and that's why I think, Iowa's defense has problem with very athletic, offenses. Oregon gets top tier talent out of high school.
Yes,
Iowa makes its living off of getting 2-3-star recruits and getting 4 or 5-star production. Out of them.
Yeah, we've got a 5-star quarterback thrown to a 5-star freshman receiver.
Yes, and it's just but you can't teach speed, you can't teach athleticism. Yeah. And Iowa's had problems with those types of offenses in the past because they're year after year they're amongst one of the top defenses in the country because Phil Parker, their defensive coordinator, is just really good at what he does and with the talent that he has. But you start getting those 5-star receivers that can run those 4.1 40s.
Yeah,
it's like
that's going to be problematic.
It can be problematic.
Ultimately, if Oregon can score on Iowa, it's going to be an Oregon win, I think.
Yeah.
The best chance for Iowa is Iowa's offense is not terrible as it has traditionally been. Iowa's is they're generally an unwatchable team.
Yeah, I make no bones about it, man. And it's why I understand why in the national media people love to dunk on Iowa.
Yeah.
And if you've ever watched an Iowa game and you're not a fan, it's got to be almost impossible.
It's a slog.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Yeah.
They're a little better than that on offense this year.
Yeah.
And they still have a good defense. So I think Iowa is going to struggle like hell to score against the Ducks.
Yeah.
But if they can stop the Ducks on offense, then,
you got to.
Who knows?
Let's hope it's not another one of those 7-3 games.
Yeah. I doubt it.
The masterpiece of Kurt Ferentz, they won 7-3, and there were no touchdowns scored in that game.
Yeah. Yeah, the 7 is that's an accomplishment with no touchdowns.
Yeah, that's two safeties.
2 safeties and a field
They
goal.
got 2 safeties for those trying to figure out that one.
So yeah, looking forward to this game. Should be a good one.
Yeah, man, and like I said, like going in throughout the week, I think I got realistic expectations on this, but by Saturday morning, I'll be pretty pumped up for an Iowa victory, and and if they win, I'll be happy. If they lose, I'll be sad.
Yeah,
and then, but at least I'll have the Cardinals to disappoint me on Sunday.
Yes, but at least they'll be disappointing you with Jacoby Brissett for the next few games.
This is like, it's funny. It just occurred to me. This is like my entire football universe is like is wrapped up in the Northwest.
Yeah,
Seattle, Oregon.
Yeah. Yep. All right. We'll enjoy the game.
You enjoy the game, man. It's not like I'm gonna be sending you shitty text messages.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to it.
In your face, Stanton.
Yeah, kick off, and then my phone will just be ding.
Ding,
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 ding, ding. Looking forward to it.
It should be a lot of fun. Anything else you want to bring up before we get the hell out of here?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Enjoy the weekend, man. Enjoy the game. And I hope Oregon can brave the elements.
Yeah. They'll discover what rain is like for the first time. Should be fun.
All right, man. See you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.